the N-word.
I've been called the N-word numerous times. But see, that's the thing with that is I've never had that really affect me, but that's just the individual I am.
Right.
Because I'm able to just analyze and say, you're not really saying this because of me. You don't know me to say
sure.
You're just kind of generalizing what you think is a normal thing for you, or how you were brought up, or how you perceive our people without knowing the individual I am as myself. So I really don't try and look too deep into that and take it personally in that sense.
Right. Good for you.
Just having that progressive mentality when it comes to that, right? Because
sure.
you can't change everyone.
No.
You can't please everyone.
No,
right?
not at all. And people are afraid of for example, I mean, there's people that are afraid of what they don't understand, or people that are different, or you know what I mean? Like, even me being sober the last 16 months, people are scared of that are still at the bars getting shit-faced all the time, because it's really their own inner demons that they're kind of afraid to face, right? So I totally understand. I mean, obviously, I'm not comparing race to being sober or anything like that. That's a terrible thing that's happened to you, and I wish it hadn't. But it's not talking about you. It's talking about the individual that's saying these things.
Exactly.
So good for you. I mean, and you're totally opposite of a stereotype. I mean, you're a well-educated, athletic, very head on your shoulders young man, right? So for people to actually stereotype you thinking that you're going to retaliate based on whatever, rap music, whatever, right? I mean, that's also what an ignorant fucking way to think, right? Yeah. So, I mean, well, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry you've ever had to encounter that. And now I'm curious, though, the other side of things, because obviously if I was to go back over to where you're from, like, what would they think of a white guy just showing up out of the, like, I'd be different, right? So I mean, if we're gonna judge London, and I'm not judging, but I'm just saying, if we're gonna talk about this, what would it be like for me to show up out of the blue over there? Would I have to be intimidated, or would they be intimidated by me, or how do you feel like that would go?
Absolutely. It's a funny dynamic when you really think about it.
Yeah.
With that,
yeah.
It's not racism in the sense that they're like, oh, it's very obvious this guy is white, we're prejudiced against that person, because we're very welcoming. Most African nations, really, but my country specifically, we were very welcoming to especially white people, right?
Yeah.
Because you kind of attribute white skin to something of higher, right? So you're loved.
That's still there, right?
Right. So, but that's just the roots of imperialism when you really look back and you really go and dig that out, right? So that's still, a thing there. But the thing with that is, it is really, when you think about it, but that's just the beautiful thing about systematic oppression, right? There's nothing you could really, to do to unroot that easily.
Yeah,
so, apart from obviously simple things like, you might get caught in the market because you don't speak our language, right?
Right.
We might call the Opoto or Muzumbu, right? So
what do those mean?
White people, basically, right? So it's just slang for white people that you don't understand. You might be spending a lot more money in the market or walking around that you would with.
It's like being called a gringo or something like that kind of thing. Okay.
Right? But apart from that, there is no really clear racial thing. It's just you're acknowledged, and obviously people are like, oh my god, wow, it's white people, that's it, right? It's not like, oh my god, white people, like,
right.
It's just, oh, that's cool, and then everybody keeps on their way. They might come up to you, talk to you about different things, just to see your input, because you're so different.
Sure. Right? Yeah.
And there's not a lot of white people back home. If there are there, most of them that are doing stuff is for businesses or whatever, investments, whatever they're doing, right?
Right. So, interesting. I mean, it sounds like, regardless of where you go, people are either going to be drawn to you because you're different or scared of you because you're different.
Exactly.
So it just depends on the individual. I mean, I think that's what I'm kind of hearing. I guess, yeah, and how you've kind of been affected by your environment, whether that's been positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
But man, so like you were hearing, was it a common experience for you to be hearing gunshots back home on a regular basis?
Absolutely, especially during our ceasefire.
Really?
There never really was a ceasefire, right? So you just normalize it, right? So gunshots after a while then start not being problematic to you, because you're hearing stray bullets consistently over your head and stuff like that. Maybe walking to school, coming back from school. So it wasn't really, at first, I mean, you'll see, obviously you hear gun sound, people react, but then it just became so normalized now that you start hearing these things that it's okay. It's part of everyday life. You're seeing dead bodies, for example, on the side of the road. That's normal. The vultures come down, because what ended up happening in Sierra Leone is the fact that our mortuaries filled, obviously, because there's a lot of people got killed.
Yeah.
So we had bodies laying on the side of the road, and it would swell up a little bit. You'd have vultures come down and pick up the delicate parts. And I don't know if you've ever smelled the body of a rotten dead human or burning human flesh, but it's absolutely disgusting. But
no.
But that becomes like a normal thing, right? So you see these things and you just, it's an everyday norm. You become desensitized to it. So it's just like, oh, it's, you know, carry on with your day. Blood stain zero or human head, carry on with your day, right? So it's just...
That's intense.
It's different.
Yeah.
Right? But it's hard outside looking in because then you're like, God, it's fucking nuts. Like, how you're okay? But then when you don't, exactly. Right?
Yeah.
When you don't know any different at the time,
it's normal.
This is normalized.
Yeah.
That violence is normalized and completely acceptable. Not until I came here looking back now and being obviously older now, reflecting, I'm like, that is fucked up.
Yeah.
When you think about
it.
Right? But it's just, when you are in that state, when you are normalized to all of this, it's completely okay to you.
Yeah.
It's okay to have such violence.
So because it was normalized to you, like you woke up and you smelled that, like, and it was just normal, like, do you think it affected you in that like negative way because you had, you know, because you hadn't, you know, like I picture like someone like myself, for example.
Yeah.
If I went through that experience because it's not normal for me, that would be like shocking. I would be
to smell. Are you talking about smelling human like burning flesh?
Fire or something. Yeah. That was what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it would be traumatizing. But like because you were so young and you normalized it and everything, like do you think it like affected you, like?
And that's
do you ever
in that negative way or like?
And that's the thing with that, right? Because the way I carry myself, and you look and you'd say no, and I would say no. But then, I mean, obviously studying clinical psychology in school and whatnot, you realize that for me is a coping mechanism, right? For me to completely be able to block that side from my childhood out so that I'm not affected in that sense is a coping mechanism within itself. So it's not necessarily me saying I'm completely okay with everything that's happened. It's just that you were able to take out traumatic things out of your life so that you can progress, so that you don't have to think about that, right? So it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But this is one of the main reasons I think I got into psychology and stuff, just to really try and understand that whole concept of how powerful really the human mind is, and really you can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? It's cliche, you can do a lot if you put your mind to it, but when you think about it, that's a prime example right there.
Yeah.
I can completely isolate and block out the darkest parts of my life and move forward.
Wow.
Right? So it's just, and yes, I am compacting my, what's the word I'm looking for? I am.
Yeah.
And you know, if I don't deload at times, so, you know, have time to sit down, break down, and really think about it, it can become detrimental to my mental health, and I'm completely aware of that.
Yeah.
Right? And you can find out as even trickles over to my modern day, my everyday life here now in Canada, with simple things like relationships.
Yeah.
I have breakups, and breakups are supposed to be sad, but for me, you know, if it's not progressing me forward, and I don't really, you know, see myself having any benefits from this breakup by being sad, I'm able to completely close and progress. Now, to my partner, that looks as if I don't care, I never cared. I do.
Okay.
But I'm just capable now of just being able to completely dissect, cut, and progress.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's gear into that a little bit. Let's gear into the relationships. So have you had any serious relationships since you've been, I mean, even in high school at a young age? I don't want to take anything away from those relationships, because I know sometimes people say, oh, it's just kid love or it's first love. Sometimes that can be some of the most powerful emotions you'll feel in your life as that age. So I don't want to take anything away from that. Have you had any, what have your relationships been like, and how many have you been in, whether it's long-term or short-term? Which ones have affected you the most?
Oh, gosh, it's going to get me in trouble. I hope my ex-girlfriend's not watching. Hey.
It's okay. We're just trying to, it's all about positive growth. So hopefully you get something out of this too.
I have been, let me see, so 1, 2, 3 serious relationships, and in all honesty, of my 3, like long term, I've had a 5 years, 3 years, but of
you're a pretty young guy too. How old are you?
Young. I'm 24.
You're 24, yeah. So you've already spent 5 years with one woman. That's pretty serious.
Problematic.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's get into that.
No, so and it's crazy because. But the first one I actually had, it was a girl. Well, I don't even want to name drop. Let's just name her X.
Okay, X.
It was X. I actually dated throughout high school.
Great. And she's also your ex, so it's fitting.
She's also my ex, so, you know, it's suitable. It was great.
This is high school?
This is high school.
Okay.
Right? All throughout high school, a little bit into first year university. You know, it was amazing. But
is she part of the reason you stayed in London, just out of curiosity? Like, why did you choose UWO?
Oh, gosh.
Was that relationship any factor?
It got slightly, and it got really toxic at the end. And I kind of wish I never really. I kind of wish I didn't push it more first year when it started getting bad.
Right.
And I try to make it work, but I mean, to be honest, this girl is absolutely psychotic. There's no sugarcoating it.
All right.
But no, seriously.
Yeah, it happens.
I'm the last person to say that about a female, but
right.
She had some issues that she needed to deal with, and I thought I could stay there and play that mediator and that kind of grieving counseling role, but that wasn't my role to take on her baggages, right? So that ended up horribly. We stopped.
And now that you've gone through some psychology courses, what would you say that, like, what would be your just kind of off the top of your head diagnosis for that woman?
This girl?
Yeah. What do you think she needed to overcome to become someone that would be able to have a healthy relationship with you?
Well, what it was for me essentially would be her not using me as her medication, because it became very toxic in the sense that
were you her safe person? Yeah. So when she was having, did she have anxiety attacks and panic attacks and things like that?
Everything. And whenever we threatened to break up, she would talk about potentially taking
her own life.
And it became very problematic for me, to the point that I had to reach out to her family.
That's a tough one.
Almost call cops one time, right? So it just, I just felt a lot of baggage, I think, of myself. And that was the reason why I might have stayed so long. Yeah. Because I was terrified and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have the resources or the understanding at the time to be able to help. So I thought the best I could do was stay in it, regardless of what was going on, right? And that obviously is a very toxic situation for me. That's
the second guest in a row that we've had talk about a relationship in which the female that they were dating threatened to commit suicide. And I shouldn't say commit suicide. I'm going to stop saying that just so everyone knows. When we talk about suicide, we no longer want to talk about it in terms of committing suicide, because it kind of brings a negative context to it, in the sense that when a criminal commits a crime, that's a negative thing. So we want to talk about death by suicide. So I still slip up and say, oh, they committed suicide, but that's something that we want to get rid of, kind of like any negative term that you want to get rid of in society, like the N-word, right? I mean, these things that we need to get rid of, we need to slowly take ownership as to what they do to the families that survive. So anyways, back to it. She had some issues. How did you deal with the suicide threats? Like that's pretty powerful.
And this is where it got problematic again, because just being the individual that I was able to take her baggage, deal with my baggage, and then put it aside.
Right. So you saw a potential,
and I just built and built. Right. So it's almost like
so not in a healthy way.
No, almost like developing sort of a secondary traumatic stress kind of thing. Right. So it was just it was horrible. Yeah. And then it just got to the point we just had to stop, and it took actually her family helping me, because it got to the point I really couldn't vocalize it back to my family, because they're like, well, we already told you this is facts. Like, why is this even a problem? We told you this from day one. So now I had to reach out to her family to be able to have them help me get back to her. And then it got to the point her parents were like, you know what, you need help, right? So they were able to kind of pull that away and actually facilitated us separating so I can pull away from that situation, right? Now, obviously, that was a very that was a turning point for me when it came to relationships and, trying to be committed. And then I really started thinking about whether or not did I really love this person? Did I really, or was I just really sitting there to facilitate, the situation this predicament I was stuck in at the time? Right. So for a bit, I took some time off, had my in and outs and whatnot, and then I actually fell in love for the first time.
Okay. This is when you're in university student.
University.
Okay. What year were you in?
Second year.
Second year.
Fell in love.
Yeah.
Great girl. Oh gosh, whatever I'm going to say. Lovely girl.
Yeah.
Athlete also. She's a varsity rugby, varsity track. Great girl. My family loved her. Her family's great. The epitome of everything I think I looked for in a woman this girl possessed.
Okay.
And literally at that point could not see any other woman carrying my child. All the traits she had, I want in my
That's children. A big one.
You know what I mean? So it was just, that was the first time it hit me. And this was, in my head, perfect. Oh, God, I loved it.
Right. So what went wrong?
distance.
Distance.
Right? So she signed with Team Canada.